Live.
Well, thank you for joining us today. SCORE, as well as the Office of Business Opportunity with the City of Houston and the HCC Center for Entrepreneurship. We are in a, for joining us today, SCORE, as well as the Office of Business Opportunity with the City of Houston and the HCC Entrepreneur. So we're in a joint collaboration to offer you information as it relates to being a vendor of the City of Houston, as well as potentially being a vendor of the City of Houston in the understanding of entrepreneurship and the different aspects of providing resources and opportunities to the community so that they'll be successful in becoming vendors as well as entrepreneurs. Today's topic is HR management. We bring a new topic every month, so look out for a new set of topics in the next 6 months, but every month we provide you with a relevant topic to help you navigate being a vendor as well as an entrepreneur. We're joined here with Dr. Portia Jackson of the Office of Business Opportunity with the City of Houston, and I'll go ahead and let her introduce herself as well.
So good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you had a pleasant and fun-filled Memorial Day weekend. I know I did, and so we are glad that you are tuning in with us to learn more about being a vendor for the City of Houston and different aspects. So much goes into it, so I'm just so grateful that we have this partnership with SCORE and HCC. We can break it down piece by piece for you so that it doesn't, they talk about eating that elephant one piece at a time, one bite at a time, and that's what we're doing. We're breaking it down, each part. And so we're going to say some information that you may have heard before, which is good because repetition makes you remember, right? And it makes it so much familiar with you. Plus, we're going to give you some new things to think about so that it doesn't seem so overwhelming. We want to make sure that you're included, that you're getting the information that you need, and that you're understanding it. So I'm so happy to be here. And Jada, did you introduce yourself?
I did not. My name, everyone should know. My name is Jada Harris, and I am a certified SCORE mentor here in the City of Houston. So check us out on the houston.score.org website, where you can find over 150 mentors that can provide you with information, everything from startup to closeout and everything in between. So if you have questions for an attorney or for a CPA, you can reach out to us at Houston SCORE and get in contact with a mentor. We are a national organization, so because this is being broadcast through this HCC Community College, it allows for people all over the world to see the information that we're providing. And therefore, if you need to reach out to a mentor in your area, we are a national organization that can provide you with a mentor as well as relevant resources. So I will go ahead and introduce Ravi, who is our director of the Center for Entrepreneurship here at the HCC Stafford location. And so I'll go ahead and let him speak.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Hope this information is educational, informational, gets you to move your journey forward as an entrepreneur. Houston Community College, we're a large institution in the city. We operate about 70 buildings, and not only do we train and educate students, but we also work with our small business owners through our procurement office, as well as programs to support minority business owners through the MBDA office. And we also have a Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program focused on supporting local entrepreneurs. So reach out to us if you have any questions or wanted to take a journey on this path of entrepreneurship. Our website is hccs.edu/SW-entrepreneurship, or an easier one, hccs.edu/small business. All right, well, pass it back to you.
Thank you, Ravi. So we will go ahead and get started. I did provide information here as far as the locations and the joint collaborations with the organizations. So again, this month's topic is HR management. And we're just discussing opportunities that exist as it relates to employment. As a vendor, I know a lot of vendors start off as solopreneurs or single entrepreneurs. And then very quickly, especially if you get a contract with the city, you're going to need employees and or contractors. And so we do want to help you understand the difference between an employee and a contractor, first of all, as well as ways to obtain great employees for your organization, as we'll explain furthermore how it relates to your business and your brand. One of the most expensive and most valuable resources that you have as an entrepreneur is your employees. And so it takes a lot of money to acquire your employees and then to retain them and then even to offboard them. So there is some things that you need to consider. And then when you do have a contract with the city and or any organization, that information, your employee information, is very relevant to the contract. It's information that you have to report. So before we get started with that, I do want to give Dr. Jackson an opportunity to kind of speak on that as far as, having employees as it relates to contracts.
Yes, and so just really, and I'm glad we're bringing this in because a lot of people, when they want to work for the city, they just think about, you gotta do the work. And then sometimes when you begin to break down the scope of work, you may get kind of, I want to say frightened, but like, oh, I'm small, right? I don't have these employees. Well, guess what? Some of your larger firms don't have them either. That's why they subcontract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that we're doing this. So again, we're breaking down that elephant and letting you know that there's possibilities, there's ways that you can get the employees you need in order to fulfill a contract and to work, and don't feel like you're not enough, because you are. Larger companies get subcontractors, they get staffing companies. They use those folks, those companies, to fulfill their contract goals, and so you can do the same thing too. But again, like you said, Jada, you want to make sure that whoever you are working with, whether it's a contractor, whether it's employees, because as business owners, you don't need to be, I call it doing the Tyler Perry. You don't need to be the director, the producer, the actor, and all that.
Yes.
That can, it wears and tears on you. Right? So even if you are the only person in your business, you want to grow your business, right? Because you want to hire folks in the community to work for your business so that you can just be the owner and then you have folks running your business for you. But with that, what you said earlier, you want to make sure that whomever you're working with aligns with your brand. And that's why HR is so important, because whoever you work with, they can mess up your brand. They can tarnish your brand.
Very quickly.
And big city,
Yeah.
small community, when we're talking about working.
6 degrees of separation.
Yes, now sometimes I think it's a little bit less than that, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that whomever you're bringing in, that they're onboarded. If even when they're contractors, you want to make sure that your values are on the same wavelength, and that you're producing, working, and performing up to the standards that you have set for your company.
Absolutely. Very good point. So we'll go ahead to the first slide. So these are some of the topics that we will discuss today. To determine employment needs. So in the HR management process, you do want to have that conversation, even if it's with yourself, what your employment needs are. A lot of people, I need an employee. And that may not be true, especially if you are starting out. You just may need a contractor because it's a short-term project, or, should I hire somebody that, works in a different state than I do? They work virtually. These are all things that you should talk about, and have a discussion with, whether it's with, again, yourself or a mentor, or the organization that you are potentially providing services to. So also employees versus contractors, like we mentioned before, there is a recruitment process that you should adopt. whether it's something very simple as, hiring someone to do it for you, or you outline a process, a workflow for your recruiting. And then retention, so once you obtain employees and or contractors, retaining them, because once you, again, most valuable resource that you could ever purchase as an entrepreneur, it is necessary to have a retention process or a retention goal or idea, so that you don't have to repeat this process, because it's grinding. It's one of those things, and I've experienced it. I myself as an entrepreneur have hired contractors, but I've completed HR for organizations, both nonprofit and for-profit, and it is a long, lengthy process. It is something that you have to take seriously. Like you said, it affects your brand, so on and so forth. And then if you don't do some of these things, there are legal consequences that you have to consider. And we want to kind of make you aware of it. We're not giving you legal advice. Let me put that on the table right now. But we do just want you to make you aware of there are legal consequences for doing some of these HR processes. So next thing that we are going to talk about is the determine your employment needs. So first of all, you want to determine the type of employee that you want to hire. You want to think about the skill level, as well as education levels, as well as the length of employment. But in this process, you have to remain neutral. You can't discriminate. I know that there's some things that you have to consider, such as heavy lifting. And even though, of course, there may be a young gentleman that's, able to carry, 500 pounds at one time.
Strapping.
Yeah. That may be your ideal candidate, but you can't rule out individuals who are of age or older or of the opposite sex, based on the fact that you have someone a need to lift 500 pounds or more. If somebody who is 65 is able to lift 500 pounds, that should not be, their age should not, because that's ageism. So that's one of those legal consequences we'll talk about later. But again, you want to look at skill level. So you first want to look at the position and or purpose of the employment.
And be honest.
Yes,
with
absolutely.
it, right?
Absolutely. Be honest with yourself.
Right.
If anything. But go ahead, you were saying.
I was going to say, and be honest in the description, because what you put out there should be what you truly want, right?
Absolutely.
So if you really want somebody who's detail oriented, and you're like, oh, it was great with numbers. I don't want to say numbers because it might deter some. Whatever you put out there is typically what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So just be honest in your description, so that people have an idea when they're reading it. They can visualize, like, oh, okay, maybe I fit, or maybe I might not fit all of it. And a lot of times, if people know that they don't fit all of it, when they get to the interview, they're going to let you know, even though I don't have this,
Right.
I can learn,
Right.
And so you really want to attract the best talent that you can, and you really want someone or folks who can do the work, but you really need to be honest about what you want, and really what you need, like you said, to really assess that. And on the back end, just because I know people are looking for this unicorn. Don't look for unicorns. Like, don't say you want something, somebody to do this, that, and the other. When they get the job, you give them 10 more responsibilities, and then you wonder why they leave, or they're burned out real easily.
Retention out the door. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So as it relates to contracts, a lot of that information is upfront. So before the contract is awarded, it's usually outlined, like you said, in the scope of work.
Yeah, that scope of work has everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And then make sure you're going to the pre-bid conferences, pre-bid meetings to learn more about it, to ask questions, so that when you begin to bring on the subcontractors or hire the employees to help you to do this contract, that you know exactly what the agency is asking for, And then you can see your gaps in your business and say, okay, I need somebody for this, I need somebody for that. And you'll be surprised, even at the pre-bid meetings, there might be organizations there, there might be an accountant there that says, you know what, hey, I've been working government all this space, I know the ropes, I can take this off your hands for you. I know some folks who are able to do this, so just always keep the networking in mind, but just really be clear in who you are and what you need.
Absolutely. I think the key is not to waste your time.
Yes.
So as you were saying earlier, being honest with the position as well as with yourself and your needs. If you're not, and you're aiming for that unicorn, you're going to waste your time. And especially as it relates to contract, that's not something that you can afford as an entrepreneur, especially if you are venturing out especially for the first time and hiring employees and or contractors. So what's important is skill and education level. A lot of people want to go for individuals with a plethora of education, which is great. Education, I'm the first one to say, okay, education is key. However, skill is important as well.
Right.
And then also soft skills. And so as we talk about branding and protecting your brand, if this person has no phone etiquette, they could be, the most intelligent and most, educated person in the world, that they have no phone etiquette, they can mess up your brand and ruin everything that you work for. Exactly. So these are some of the things that you should consider when determining the type of employee that you are looking to hire. So then also thinking about the length of employment. So if you want somebody to ride this journey with you forever, that's one thing to consider. We all want that. Once you find that one good person, you don't want to lose them. And you want to invest in that person. They may have great phone etiquette. They may have great interpersonal skills. But they don't have a lot of skills, or they're currently in school at HCC. You want to invest in those individuals because they have a foundation that you can work with. Unless there's a project or a contract that requires engineering, then of course you need to hire someone that can deliver on those requirements. I do know the city of Houston has requirements as it relates to reporting, especially when it comes to construction contracts. And construction and restaurants are the highest level of employers, at least here in Houston, but in the United States, because of the turnover rate. So they have a lot of individuals going in and out of their organizations. And a lot of that information has to be reported on contracts. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yes, and there's one in particular, prevailing wage, and so that can get you in a lot of trouble if you don't comply with that. And so when we're talking about construction contracts and prevailing wage, what's making sure is that you are actually paying your folks what you're supposed to be paying them. You're not giving them a couple dollars underneath the table, but everything is legitimate. You're paying people fairly. And also we have a program called Pay or Play, which means, listen, these folks that you have working for you, either you're going to make sure that they have the insurance that they need, or you're going to contribute to a pot of money so that the city can then issue out the insured packages that they need. So it's called Pay or Play. So we take that very, very seriously, because you are dealing with tax dollars and the residents here. And so we want to make sure that we are not shortchanging our folks just so that we can get more money in our pockets as a business owner, and then we're leaving the folks in our community shortchanged for taking the work from them, but we're not paying them adequately. So we want to make sure that when we're doing that we're paying attention to those documents, and that will be in your contract. So it's not something that you have to, oh my gosh, nobody told me about it. It's all there. And our office will make sure that if you are a prime contractor on a contract that you are following the prevailing wage and equal employment opportunity, we have them on speed dial and all that information, as well as the pay or play. And there's something else, and it just escaped my mind, but it'll come back to
Okay,
me.
sure. Yeah, so, and, so with the pair play and all of these requirements, they are offered or explained prior to you even applying for the contract. It's outlined, and I always suggest as a contract manager to use a potential contract or a previous contract
Yes.
as a template. Go over that information and set up your organization to fit that, so that when you are ready to apply for a contract with the city, then you're able to answer to it very, very easily. It won't be something that you're stumbling upon or that you have to come up with, especially when it comes to the liability insurance. There's specific amounts that you have to retain as a business, especially when it comes to construction. Even, and I know it's a little off topic, but automobile insurance, there are liabilities that you have to retain within your business even to apply for the contract. So be aware of that, study that information, and again, you can always call the Office of Business Opportunity and or attend one of their certification meetings. That's very informative, as well as the pre-bid meetings that will explain all of that detail, and there'll be someone there as a resource to answer your questions.
Yes, and bring your questions to the
Yes.
pre-bid. When you show up to the pre-bid meeting, you should have already read that bidding solicitation. Don't come to the pre-bid meeting without reading that solicitation, because you want to read through it if you have any questions, or even if you're saying, damn, this almost seems impossible. Bring that up during the pre-bid meeting, because it may be something that was overlooked and it needs to be changed. So you want to always come prepared for that, and you never know who's in the room, so you always want to be able to show that you did the pre-work.
Yes.
when you come there. If it's maybe on a retail, doing uniforms for the police department, maybe
Right.
that's the pre-bid meeting. And you're like, okay, I'm here, I can do the embroidery and all those things, but I just don't have the staff. You never know, there could be an HR company there saying, of course, we can't do the embroidery and the patches and all that stuff that's needed, but we can do the HR part. So they might be able to come in and do the subcontractor for you, because they can help you with the staffing to get everything done. So just always be prepared for those opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then also we do want to consider the employment history, not just the employee, the potential employees, but also your employment history. What, as you as an organization, what have you've done? So maybe you're new to entrepreneurship, or this is a new business, but you do have an employment history. You do have an understanding of what is necessary in order to at least onboard somebody, because you've been onboarded yourself. Now, if I'm talking to some of those 13-year-old phenomenons that, have never had a paper route, then, of course, you don't have an employment history. But again, there are resources and information. If not in the library, then you definitely have it on the houston.score.org website, where we provide you with resources about employees' employment, so on and so forth. So we also want to understand employees versus contractors, which we're probably going to sit on this for a minute, because there is a big difference between the two. And a lot of entrepreneurs buy for contractors because it's an easier process and usually more affordable, especially because a lot of employers don't know how much it truly costs to have an employee. Not only do you have to pay your employees' benefits or their taxes, but you have to pay the employer taxes for having employees. And then you have to pay the quarterly, there's just a lot. So then, employers opt for contractors, which can be a legal problem if you do. So first of all, let me put it in Dr. Jackson's area as far as contracts. Is there a solidified difference between employees and contractors as it relates to contracts?
Yes, and so again, it will let you know in that particular bid, because every bid, could differ, but you just really want to make sure that there's no gray area in who's your employee and who are your contractors. And I guess, I won't say that to go off topic, but I just wanted to say, I will bring it up a little bit. So a lot of folks, that messed a lot of people up when they were doing like PPP and all those things, because folks, I have a bunch of contractors, but then they really had no employees, and they didn't even have themselves as an employee. So that kind of, I think that kind of brought to light a lot, that people can really understand the difference between employees and contractors. And then so it's really truly important for you to understand that when you have your employees are people that, you're paying for, right? That have certain hours that report to you. Your contractors are folks who just actually might have their own company, might be freelance, depending on what type of industry you're in. And you're really you're not their employer. They are hired to do a particular job and leave. So if we have a house, you contract somebody to come and do your roof. The person that does your roof is not your employee. They're not on your payroll, right? You're not listing them and counting their hours. You just got another company to come and do a job that you needed. Once that job is done, you wash your hands of them. So that's another way to look at employees versus contractors.
And on contracts with the city, of course, if you're, applying for a contract, you are a contractor with the city. You're not an employee of the city. So
Right.
let's go ahead and put that on the table. Yeah,
It's
because a lot of
different.
people think, well, I work for the city. You're a contractor of the
Yeah.
city. So then at that point, you have the contract. You've been awarded the contract, and you have to provide, 1 million widgets by the end of the year. At that point, you have to either hire employees or contractors, or both, depending on the different, things that has to be executed. Does the city enforce you to make that determination on your own, or is this something that they outline for you?
So it's always going to be, it depends, because each contract is going to be different based off the need of the work and the industry. And so that solicitation, that contract is going to outline pretty much what needs to happen. And so it may say, even in the solicitation, the bid solicitation, it may say that you have to be in business for 5 years with at least 20 employees. If that's what it says, that's what they want, right? But there may be other times where it just lists the work, and then you, being the business owner, may say, ooh, I only have 2 employees, we can't pull this off, we're gonna have to hire some more people in order to do that. So then you have to make that decision yourself to understand the ultimate goal and how you can complete that contract.
Yes. So what I do want to do is outline the difference between employees and contractors. So according to the IRS, an employee is controlled, which means that they must, if you say that they have to clock in between 8 and 5 p.m. or at 8 a.m. and clock out at 5 p.m., that is an employee, flat out. There's no getting around it. You are now controlling that individual. A contractor is bringing something to the table. They're bringing a skill set, they're bringing their tools, you're not controlling, you're not dictating what they do and what they can't do. They can come and go as they please. You don't have to institute a work break for them or anything like that. That's a contractor. So that's very loosely, or very, I'm just giving, a little definition so that you can understand the difference between the two. There are more details that you should research, that you should get a better understanding of the difference between the two, because if you don't, and you try to control a contractor, which I've had clients do that, You make them show up to a team meeting every Friday. You make them wear uniforms. That is an employee. This is not a contractor. And so you say you go for 6 months to a year to 5 years paying these people as contractors, and somehow, some way, the IRS or Workforce Commission, somebody finds out, you are now responsible for back pay, penalties, and fines for all of the period of time that these individuals are employed for you. So you have to make this determination up front, as well as whenever you pivot. So one of the things we did learn, and I keep saying this each month that we meet, one of the things we did learn during COVID is how to pivot. And so like Dr. Jackson is saying, if you're making a determination, hey, I only have 2 employees, it's time for me to hire more employees like the 2 that I already have. Go ahead and make them employees. Don't try to, cut costs by, hiring contractors to do the same work the other 2 employees are doing, because it's gonna cost you in the end. So this is something that I wanted to sit on and to kind of really point to, so that you won't make those errors as you go through your entrepreneurship journey. And then also, as a contractor with the city of Houston, that's another reporting agency that you don't want to not report appropriately and or hire the wrong type of individuals, because they have a reporting requirement to the government. And so whatever falls on them is going to trickle down to you as a contractor. I'm not trying to scare you, but I just want to make these things plain so that you're aware of what you're getting into.
And there is help too, right? So
Absolutely.
SCORE can help, definitely PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, they can definitely help in helping you make these decisions. We also have at OBO, we have free legal assistance too, that you may want to involve an attorney just to make sure. I know sometimes when you mention, it's like when you mention math, people are like, oh, we mention legal, like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. But doing it up front can definitely save you a whole lot of headache and a whole lot of money. If you do it up front, to make sure that you're doing it appropriately. Because what you don't want to do is shortcut, because I'm telling you, every time you shortcut, it's going to dig you in a hole that's going to take you years, if you can get out. Because you don't want to ruin your brand. Right. You don't want to really mess over people, just in general. It's just not a good thing. And then you're hurting the community too.
Absolutely.
Right? Because everybody is tied, that's somebody's child, that's somebody's mother, that's somebody they're providing for, and you just messed up, that. In big city, small community, and the word gets out, and so we don't want to run you out of town. Because
let me just give you an example, or just drop a word, and then maybe you'll get the understanding. Enron. So whenever you hear Enron, if you're a business person or entrepreneur, and you've heard about Enron, and that's all I have to say is that, and it's just, even if you don't know the whole story, it's still whoa, because they were in the news, and it was just a simple decision. Honestly, it was a simple decision that they made that caused a lot of heartbreak, not just for the brand and the people that work for them, but also for the community and as a contributor to the business world itself. So again, these panel discussions that we're having are geared to assist you in making the best determination as potential vendors of the city of Houston, as well as vendors of the city of Houston. So
and you have help. That's
you
have help. Houston is just, I think, phenomenal in the amount of resources that are available. So it's not just one entity that can help, but there's several entities that are willing to help you, and a lot of them at no cost. So make sure you're taking advantage and getting connected with that, so that when you have that dilemma, you can go and get those resources to help you, so that you are building your business successfully. Because you want to grow to where you're being the prime contractor, where you're giving other companies the opportunity to work on city contracts, because you've grown. So you want to make sure that you have that strong foundation, like Jada mentioned earlier, and you're taking care of people. So you're being good, because you want somebody to treat your kids or your family or your friends that way.
Absolutely. One last thing I want to say on this topic is, another key component of determining if they're a contractor or an employee is the payment negotiation or requirements. So with the City of Houston and contracts, there, like Dr. Jackson mentioned earlier, there are payment requirements. You have to pay a certain wage for the level of skill, the level of employee, contractor that you hire to do the work for the contract. So if you're having a conversation with a potential employee and or contractor, what makes the determination is if you're offering an hourly rate, typically a contractor, that's not a contractor language. If you are stating a flat fee or they're offering a flat fee, that's contractor language. So if you tell them, okay, I need 1,000 widgets provided by December in 6 months, then that's and they say, okay, that's $10,000. That's a contractor language, okay? So if you are needing 1,000 widgets by December, and you need that person to come in on a Monday through Friday basis from 8 to 5 p.m., then that is an employee conversation. That is an employee language. You don't have anything. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and move to the next slide, which is recruitment process. So I kind of mentioned earlier that you should have a recruitment process that is repeatable. You don't want to waste your time. Again, time is of the essence here, and it's, again, more expensive than any resource that you can possibly have as an entrepreneur. I know you think money is important. It is, it's great, but your time becomes extremely valuable.
You don't get it back.
Yeah.
Can't make more time.
No. There's a few situations where I wish that I could get that time back. So it's become extremely valuable to me as an entrepreneur. So that is repeatable. So which means that, okay, if you decide to use Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever process you decide to use to hire an individual, make sure that you one, write it down or, put it in some sort of format that you can repeat it so that it's easily done over multiple times, because finding that one employee, let alone 20 employees, it's going to take a repeatable habit to do it successfully. If you're using Indeed here and you're using LinkedIn here and you're using, without a purpose, because you can use Indeed to find entry-level employees, but you may want to use LinkedIn to find employees with a certain skill set. Maybe they're engineers, like I mentioned earlier. But whatever your determinant is for, you want it to be repeatable. Is there a requirement by the City of Houston as far as recruiting individuals? Okay, all right. So just so you know, whatever process you determine that's repeatable is acceptable for the City of Houston, as we know, right, at this point. So then use verified resources. I'm so sorry, I have to laugh because there's so many resources that are out there that say they'll produce the world for you, or they'll get you 15 employees in 5 days that are not verified, and you're spending money to obtain these resources because you need those 20 employees, for the contract that's going to start in a month. So you're paying $5,000 to get this, and you end up losing money. So use verified resources. Even sources that we've heard of that are very popular may not be a good fit for what your recruiting process. And then retain information for future references as well as audits. So even if you don't hire the employee and or contractor, retain that information for a period of time. As far as I know, there's no period of time that you have to retain recruitment information, but I would do it for at least a year. Now, I know that when individuals apply for contracts, they do have to provide, and it's called good faith effort, provide that they did search for a certain group of people in order to meet the requirement of the contract. And that information needs to be retained as long as the contract dictates, which is typically, I think, for 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah, our contracts are typically 1, 3, or 5 years.
Okay, all right.
But sometimes they could go over,
Mhm.
anything can happen, and it could be prolonged. So we
Right.
just want to make sure you keep the
Absolutely.
information in a safe spot. But yeah, so we talk about good faith efforts. We're talking about when there's goals on contracts, and the goal might say I'll stick with uniforms today. So with the uniforms, providing the uniforms for the Houston Police Department, there is an 11% goal on it. And so maybe the contract is to find a minority woman-owned business. So if I'm the prime contractor and I have to sub that out, then I have to look for a city certified firm to be able to do that portion of the work. And the good faith efforts comes in if I say, you know what, I've searched high and low. I went to this networking event, I've advertised it here, there, and there. Could not find anybody that was city certified that can sew patches, on the arm of the shirt. I have to show that proof that, hey, I did search and I did look over a period of time. It wasn't like that I looked one day for 1 hour. Nobody's there. I can do it all myself.
Right.
So no, you have to show that information through the duration of the contract. So
Absolutely. So retaining that information is highly important, because you can be audited anytime when you're maintaining a contract. My experience in contract management comes from a major university, and even though that was in the medical field, at NIH, Johnson & Johnson, just any organization, if you could have obtained the contract for a 5-year period, and you maintain that information for 3 years after that. But if you continued the contract for another 5 years, then you have to retain that information now for 10 years plus 3 years. So you want to make sure you understand how long you need to retain that information. Again, there's fines and penalties and reasons why you need to do this. Again, because this information is being reported to the government. So now retention efforts. Again, we've talked about this a little bit. It helps to maintain your company brand. It promotes company growth when you have individuals that have been with your organization for a long period of time, whether that's 6 months to 10 years. It helps promote growth. And then finally, it positively affects the community. Like Dr. Jackson says, your name is now out there in the community, and you don't want to mess with anyone's children, anyone's babies, because that affects your brand. If we say, the beetle bug, one of the things, they look all nice and fancy now, but if those who know about the beetle bugs, the Volkswagen bugs back in the 70s, we all know that those were not, the best brand, and it really hurt Volkswagen, which is really known for a family vehicle. It took a while to get that brand back. If we talk about Wells Fargo and their recent experience, there's so many things that, some of these things that happen. There's nothing is unavoidable. You hire the best person and work for you for 5 years, and then something happens with them. You just never know. But as much as you possibly can, protect your brand so that you can be a beacon in the community. That's the best possible.
Because being social responsible is really
absolutely
more of a requirement now than it was years ago.
Yes.
And because we have social media, you can be destroyed just
instantly.
Like that.
With
Cancel culture.
Yeah.
And so, and then really when you think about it too, everybody gets reviewed, whether it's from Yelp reviews or whatever, because no matter what happens, word of mouth is still the vehicle.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's just moving faster now.
Yeah. And so people are constantly looking about, do I want to work with this company? I don't know, but they will take a stranger's review
Right.
over anything,
Right.
you know, and people holler,
Oh,
right?
yes, yes, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's unfounded, and it's, and they're doing it to damage, you know, your brand or who you are, and
Right.
it's unfounded, and it's unfortunate that that can happen. So the only thing that you can do is combat that with what you have done for the community.
Right.
Because of cancel culture, and because of social media, it's almost like you have to be on guard.
Yeah.
I know that even me as a consumer over, you know, I'm old school, so it wasn't until maybe the last 2 or 3 years I have been looking at reviews before I make a purchase. And I first moved here to Houston, moved to an apartment building. Of course, they showed me the best apartment that was available.
Right.
And then I moved into my actual apartment, and it was horrific. And I was, connected to this organization for a year, at least a year through a lease. I did get out before the lease was over because of the conditions of the apartment. But had I reviewed the reviews prior to moving in there, I would have never selected that apartment. So, this is some things that I know that's not employment, but it helps you to give you an
Yeah,
understanding.
and it really does, because it also affects how if people are going to do business with you.
Yes.
Because we've seen multiple times that there may be a business in hot water. Now, whether they were guilty or innocent, it may not have been determined, but people will start pulling away. Well, until you get that case situated, we can no longer work with you, and they're left out there on the island because of what happened. And so that happens for everybody. So you want to make sure that when you are hiring employees, when you're working with contractors, it's so important that whoever you bring in either facet, that they align with your values and your goals, because it can really mess you up. And you do want to make sure that with everything you're doing, you're being socially responsible, and you're pulling from the community, right?
Yeah,
for them to work for you. So when you're pulling from them, you want to also make sure that you're giving back, and that's going to help you, because you would never believe the chain and the connections that if you do well and you're doing things in the community, somebody might say, you know what, even though this person gave me a better price to work with us, we like what you were doing in the community.
Yeah.
Maybe you help this organization, and I have a personal tie to someone who's involved in that organization, so I'm going to choose you over somebody else. So you always want to make sure that no matter what you're doing, especially there's to go scholarly on folks, but there's an article back from the 80s. It was called "People Make the Place," and the scholar makes an argument that it's always the people that are hired that actually make the determination of how the organization operates and how it's viewed by everybody else. So if the organization has a bad name, it's because the people that are in there. So it's really important.
Something to think about, something to concentrate on. And we do want to, there are organizations that part of their recruitment process is to hire individuals with a background, a criminal background, and that's their driving force. And we're not, distracting from that. That is not something that we're indicating. What we're indicating is that when you're, making decisions for your business, make sure it aligns with your vision, your mission, and your purpose. And so if your purpose and your vision, your mission is to hire individuals with a criminal background so they can prove, their work ethic, or,
because everybody makes mistakes.
Exactly.
Not everybody gets caught.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So
yes.
No one is,
no one's perfect.
Right.
But, we just want you to be cognizant of what your resources are, what decisions that you have to make, and in the process in doing that.
Yes.
So let's go ahead to the next one. So the legal consequences. So first, let's talk about discrimination. We kind of touched on this when we first started. There are discrimination laws against hiring practices. So you do want to be aware of those. Again, there's legal resources out there, or library resources that will make you aware of it. You can always reach out to SCORE to find out that information. City of Houston has certification opportunities. So of course they have discrimination legalities within their contracts. So you do want to be aware of that. You want to kind of expand?
No.
No? Okay.
Be aware of those.
Yeah, be aware of them.
Be fair, y'all. Think about the 5 protected classes
Yes.
and make sure that you're not discriminating.
Absolutely. And, first, people always think about, race as being the first, then gender. Then, of course, there's sexuality, and then there's ageism, which I think a lot of people forget about.
40 and over.
Yeah.
So you can't say you've been discriminated, age discrimination for 27.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't count.
Right. 40 and over,
Define
okay? So, look at some of the resources that are out there for that. Then
Legally.
Legal, yeah,
Legally.
yes. Reporting and audits. Again, we just mentioned there are requirements that are necessary, especially as it relates to contracts. But even if you don't, go in the contract realm, when you hire employees and maybe contractors, you should be aware of the discrimination laws that are out there. And then also there are fines. So I kind of wanted to leave this towards the end. But if you happen to hire employees and or contractors who do not have a legal residency, you can, that is illegal, number one. There are Social Security cards that say on there, not for employment, that you cannot hire that person, okay? If you go that route, because I know a lot of people, especially when it comes to contractors, they onboard individuals, they're waiting for them to turn in their documentation, and they are now worked for a period of time, and they are not producing the documentation that they need. For contractors, they need to provide you with a W-9 form immediately. You should not wait for that. You should get that as soon as you begin the project. For employees, you would need to have them fill out an I-9 form so that they can provide you with their Social Security information and so on and so forth. This documentation is to protect you. So therefore, gather that information immediately. If you do not, it is $250 per employee, up to $2,000 per employee if you do not follow these guidelines. So now that you're aware, I'm sure that you're going to want to make these decisions as quickly as possible. So those are some of the legal consequences for employment. So now that we have reached the end of today's presentation, we do want to open it up to any questions that were provided online or within the
And
room.
before that, I just
Okay,
want to
I'm
add too, the information that was shared too, you can apply it in the reverse. So if you're being contracted out to work for a particular job, you still need to know the information.
That's good.
So that you know your rights and how you should be treated. So just make sure that if you're saying like, well, I'm just trying to be a subcontractor, and I'm trying to work, but hey, you need to know how these people are supposed to treat you and what they're supposed to follow, because you have to be knowledgeable of that.
Absolutely.
Because if you're not knowledgeable of that, you won't know that you're being taken advantage of. Right. And that could cost you money too, because you could be missing out on things that you were promised.
Or entitled to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Entitled to.
Yeah, absolutely. So do we have any online questions?
Yeah, so you do have. So this one's actually when you were asking about contractors and employees. Now, we live in the world where we're connected. It's one big world. There's websites like Fiverr.com where you can hire people to do some work, like content writing or social media marketing. If the employee is not in the United States, but they are part of a Fiverr or freelancer, what do you consider them? Because they may be employees of an international company, but are they really? So what are your thoughts on that? That's kind of a gray area, right?
It's great, but if I did not put them on my payroll, they are not my employee.
Right.
They are contracted out.
Right. And depending on the organization that you hire them from, whether it's Fiverr or whatever, they may be controlled by that organization, so they may be an employee of the organization. If it is truly Fiverr, then they are contractors. And so you are looking, the purpose and the thought pattern of onboarding or acquiring these individuals is so that they could do contract work. So if you were ever audited or contacted by the IRS, you have that proof. I obtained this individual through Fiverr for this project, so on and so forth. But say, for instance, you met them through Fiverr, but now this relationship is great and you want to actually hire them as an employee. You can do that. You can hire them as an employee, but you have to go through the processes that the IRS outlines. So as an employer to hire that individual. So there are rules as to how you can acquire someone that lives outside the United States. There is documentation that you have to complete in order before you can hire those individuals from out of the country.
And as a follow-up to that question, the requirement of wage that is required. What if the wage in a different country for a contractor is very different? So, for example, hiring software developers out of India or Indonesia or Philippines, and then charging them to a city contract.
Because you are an employer in the United States, you have to abide by the United States rules. And so even if they get paid $25 an hour and the contract says they must be paid $50 an hour, you have to pay them that 50. Yeah. One thing that just popped to mind is where do you go to hire people? And a lot of people go to Indeed, I'm not going to on camera say anything bad about any organization, but what I will say is use your community. Absolutely, as we're talking about, being community centric, use your community. And that means if your church members, the school that you go to, HCC has a great resource as far as having not just interns, but also employable students here. You want to connect to organizations, and this helps with brand protection, with organizations that can funnel employees to you. I had a bad experience through a nonprofit that I was working for, and we hired an individual through one of the community resources, through the social resources, I should say, social media resources. And this individual ended up stealing from the organization. This guy came in, suit and tie, answered all of the interview questions. He was on time, as compared to his counterparts. It was all over the map. And he was working as a salesperson and ended up stealing from the organization. And he was related to a previous customer of the dealership. And so it was a bad experience. So that's why I think it'll be, nothing's, perfect, but if you connect to an organization, then it's less likely for those individuals to, do anything, against your organization. One of the other businesses that I had, I worked for a hospital, and I needed CNA, certified nurses assistants, to assist me in my business. So these are individuals that I work with, that I could, see on Monday through Friday. And, if something came up missing from one of my clients' house, I know where to find you, and we work for the same employer. So, it was one of those, it was, organic, connection that I had, and I felt very secure in that, and don't forget about your family members, they're employable. So, but still interview them.
Can they work for
you?
Exactly.
So these are some of the good resources that you can and think about as you're hiring individuals. It's very hard to hire someone right off the street, because this is someone, again, that's going to affect your brand.
Yeah, and then just to add to that too, if you're a staffing agency,
yes,
this is really how you can really build your brand, to make sure that you're bringing in folks so that there's always gonna be a need for people working on contracts to get employees. So if you're a
Absolutely.
staffing agency, take some of these tips that we're telling you so that you can make sure that you're marketing and you're choosing the right people to be temps, so that when you go out and be that resource to businesses who are doing government contracting, that you're able to provide them and say, listen, I've vetted my folks.
Yes, yes.
And you have, references, check those references.
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
there's laws about what you can and
Mhm.
can't say when you're doing the references, but people kind of give you an idea,
Yes.
If they don't want to provide a reference, that's kind of
That's a red flag.
that's a reference.
Yeah. That's
So, yeah, so just think about that too.
absolutely.
All right, so two questions, but it looks like they're both are around retention. Okay, so one question is about culture. How do you create a culture where people don't leave you, or? And then the related question is, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to pay someone a salary when you don't have regular income, because
Yes.
contract work could be, seasonal, for example.
Mhm.
So how do you retain people? So I guess they're both related there.
Yeah.
Seasonality and then also culture.
Cost of doing business. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. As far as retention, there's different incentives, if you can afford it, even if it doesn't have to necessarily be tied to money, because a lot of people, it's not about money. They want to have that connectivity, they want to have that family, they want to have that, when they go to an organization, they want to feel welcomed and valued. That's key. They want to feel valued, and that sometimes is not tied to money. But if you can show your gratitude with a gift card, $15 gift card or something to that effect, that's a great way to retain people. And again, connecting them to resources. So for instance, you are a recruitment firm, you're a staffing agency, connecting to the HCC, one, as a funnel for your temps, but then also giving back as far as referring those individuals back to the resources that HCC has to help them increase their skills, using them as a tool in order to increase the value of your employees is a great way to retain people.
And I would say two things. One, just like when you have children, each child is different,
Yes.
right? And so one child may love to get presents or gifts.
Mhm.
When another one, if you try to give them gifts, they're like, I don't care about that, but maybe it's the words of affirmation that
Yes.
motivates them. So you have to know what your employees want and need for them to be motivated. It always provide an opportunity for them to be a part of the organization,
Absolutely.
right? Where they can grow, where they see some value of investing parts of themselves in it. That typically helps to retain them. And just use different methods,
Mhm.
And also and I'll try to clean this one up. So there was a skit some years ago with Dave Chappelle, and it was called Pop Copy, if anybody's seen
Oh
that.
my gosh, yes.
And so, and I'm giving you the clean
yeah.
version. And so what it was mimicking a copy place,
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
And so people would come in, and the first people that they met were just terrible. They were rude. They would use foul language towards the customer. And then it shows that, why did those individuals act that way? Well, their training video, the owner of the company spoke that way to them.
Mhm.
And so what you have to remember is that when you have an organization, when you are a business owner, the culture starts with the founder.
Yes.
So whatever you have, the values that you have, that's going to be permeated throughout that culture.
Mhm.
It always starts from the top and it trickles down. So how you treat the next folks under you is how they'll treat the folks underneath you. And if someone kind of comes out of pocket from what you have taught them, you need to, pull them aside and let them know. Because if you continue to condone behavior that's outside of that you have, your values, then you're changing the culture, and people are going to say, well, they're not going to do anything if someone, does something malicious to me, whatever. So just have to remember that as a business owner, you set the culture.
Mhm.
And there's very resources that you can tune into a lot of books that you can read about culture. Culture is very, very hard
Yes.
to start, and it's
Absolutely.
very, very hard to change.
Mhm.
And so you want to make sure that as a business owner, especially because I know we're pretty much talking to small business owners, for you to understand that culture of an organization starts with the founder. It starts with you, so you have to lay that out.
Right. And only thing that I would say, in addition to that, is that, like we said earlier, make sure, and this affects the culture, this affects retention, your brand, everything, is make sure that individual lines up with your purpose of your business, because that, again, protects it. If they don't line up with your purpose and you're saying, but I gotta hire somebody, so let me just hire them. They can, negatively speak bad about you, affect your brand. They can change the culture. Say you have those 2 employees, they can affect those 2 individuals if they have a strong enough personality,
Yeah.
especially when you're off doing what you need to do as a business owner and they're around
They're
those
being
individuals.
pop coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, these are some things. So on the forefront is, do they line up with your purpose? If they don't, then if they don't, then understand that and know that, this is something that you have to address as you are grooming this individual in your organization.
And that's what, when they are recruiting folks, they
Yes.
should really be making
Exactly.
sure that folks line up with the values
Mhm.
of the organization that you set, because you want to make sure that people are clear.
Right.
So when they come to work here, if performance is what you value, then let them know, hey, we're about performance organization, customer service. Hey, and everything should line up to
Yes.
that. So you shouldn't be saying, we're a customer service organization, but we don't answer the phones when anybody calls.
Right.
So you want to make sure that everything that you're doing is lining up with those goals and those missions and that vision.
And so what I will say, and I love doing this part, is that, okay, so we're 6 months into our panel discussion. This just goes all the way back to our first month where our conversation was about the business plan. The first 3 lines that should be in your business plan is your vision, your mission, your purpose. And so if you have that already outlined, then you will be able to, at this point, 6 months later, be able to hire somebody that lines up with those 3 things.
Could you address the second part about seasonality in
Yes.
between contracts?
Yes, and that's the hard part. That's because even myself, I have contractors that work for me, and very recently there was a shift or a pivot in my organization or my business, and I had to let my contractor know, hey, something has changed. I'm going to have to reduce your pay. And so, and it's the cost of doing business, and especially as it relates to contractors, they should be understandable about that, but as it relates to employees, you have a requirement. You have to pay them. There's no getting around it, especially as it relates to contracts. Even if the contract is not going to be paid to you for 45 days, between that 45 days and you're supposed to pay them, you're required by contract to pay them on a biweekly basis, you have to pay them. So that means that you have to get a line of credit, you have to get a loan, you have to tap mom and dad, you have to do something in order to pay those individuals. And then also pay your employee taxes on time. So these are all things that you need to consider before onboarding employees.
So it's not really a question, so we'll skip that one.
Okay.
Just a smart remark, so it's okay. But no, I don't see anything now. But I'll ask, how do folks get in touch? I know the slide is there,
Yep.
so I'll put the slide up here. But just read it out for those on a mobile phone.
Perfect. So those of you who want to reach out to us and get more information, connect to the resources, you can reach out to Dr. Portia Jackson at the City of Houston, and I'll let her go ahead and provide you with her contact information.
Yes, you can email me at Portia, that is PORSC, that happens a lot, HA.Jackson@HoustonTX.gov, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And it's my name, it'll probably be under Portia Dr. PJ Jackson, and feel free to ask me questions there.
All right, and then we also have Robbie at, Houston Community College Center for Entrepreneurship. I'll let you go ahead and provide your information.
Sure. As on the slide there, basically you could reach out to me by email, Ravi, RAVI dot Brahmbatt, BRAHMBHATT at hccs.edu. Another quick way to get my phone number and all, or find me on LinkedIn, is to go to that hccs.edu/small business.
And I am Jada Harris, and you can reach out to me at jada.harris@scorevolunteer.org or on the houston.score.org website. And you can also find me on LinkedIn at Jada A. Harris on LinkedIn. So thank you for joining us. We really enjoy providing you with this information. Please reach out to us with any questions. We'll be more than happy to provide you with the information.
Let's just, when's the next one?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So the next one will be July 7th at 1 p.m. here at the HCC Missouri City location. Thank you. And also online. We will be providing the information. So this great opportunity to meet with us in person. You can also, take time afterwards to ask us any questions. I know it's kind of,
I'm gonna have a prize for
what?
somebody that shows up.
Okay, yeah. During the summer break,
Yeah.
if you come on out, we have a prize for you. Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Jackson has a prize for you. Let's see if Score can do something. So yes, July 7th at 1 p.m.
Thank you.